Hello.
Hello.
This is Mohammed. Are we
Yes.
starting now?
Yes, Mohammed. We'll be beginning in a few minutes. We are just waiting for some more people to join in. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, waiting.
Okay, great. Thanks. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining in. We are just waiting for a couple more people to join in, so we'll be beginning in around 2 to 3 minutes. Thanks a lot for your patience. Hi, everybody. So let's get started. I think more people can join in as they keep coming in. I really appreciate you guys taking the time out to view this webinar. In today's webinar, we'll be talking about how HR and people operations teams can transfer some of their workflows to Slack, Microsoft Teams, and Google Chat in order to make these workflows more efficient and collaborative within the organization. So moving on, the agenda for today is actually quite packed. We'll be beginning with tips and tricks inside Slack, Microsoft Teams, and Google Chat, just to help you get more out of your day and make the whole process efficient for you. Then we'll be moving on to some of the specialized areas of HR and people ops that we deal with day in and day out: hiring, new employee onboarding, time and attendance, employee engagement, etc. Before we begin, a little blurb about us. So we are Anek, and we started out 3 years ago with a mission of making chat-based HR software. And we have three products: Attendance Bot, Office Amp, and Expensetron. And we are currently integrated with Slack, Microsoft Teams, and Google Chat. We are not affiliated to Slack in any way, though we work inside Slack all the time and we love Slack, but we are not affiliated to Slack in any way. With that, we can get started with the tips and tricks. So in case you want to go ahead and personalize Slack or MS Teams, then what you can do is, let me just pull up my Slack screen. So yes, what you can do is that you can just go ahead and go to the preferences section within Slack, and you can just come to themes and then choose a theme for yourself, any of the themes that you like over here. The idea being that if you deal with multiple workspaces throughout the day, then you can just go ahead and choose themes for these workspaces to be able to differentiate between the workspaces that you're on. In a similar fashion, you can go ahead and customize Slack by adding custom emojis and custom messages. The whole idea behind adding custom emojis is that if the employees in your organization have done something that the company really believes in or has exhibited uh, a value that the company really believes in, then you can just send across these emojis to a channel. So what I have done for my team is that whenever somebody exhibits a value that we strongly believe in as a company, we just send out our company logo, which is why you see the company logo over there as a custom emoji. In a similar fashion, you can also go ahead and have custom messages inside Slack. So for example, Slack has a bunch of preset messages that you'd see over here, but you can also have custom messages within Slack. Moving on, one of my favorite features within Slack is the whole idea of being able to create channels. So when you go about creating channels, you can either have public channels or private channels. You can just use the toggle over here to make the channel private, or you can just use the toggle to make it public, right? The public channel by default would be open to a larger audience, whereas a private channel would just be open to the people that you have added onto that particular channel. And we'd be using the concept of channels later on when we talk about hiring and onboarding. We'd be using the concept of channels a lot, which is one of my favorite features within Slack. Moving on, you can also go ahead and choose to pin particular posts onto a channel. So you can just click on pin to channel, and then you can just pin this post. Once you have pinned this post, at a later point, you can just go ahead and unpin this post from a channel as well. So for example, if you've got a channel related to, let's say, new hires, so you can pin onboarding documents onto a particular channel, and the people would be able to access the onboarding documents on that particular channel. Lastly, I'd like to talk about managing noise on Slack. So you can do that in a bunch of ways. Uh, One of the ways that you can manage noise is that on a particular channel, you can just go ahead and click on notification preferences, and you can go ahead, choose what notifications you want to receive from a particular channel. Or if you think that the channel is no longer relevant to you, then you can just go ahead and mute this channel. Or if it's a project that you're no longer working on, you can just mute notifications from this particular channel. What you can also do is that you can go ahead and go to the preferences, and the preferences has a notification section. And over here, you can choose between devices. What notifications do you want to receive on mobile devices, and what notifications do you want to receive on desktop, and how you manage notifications can be done from within the notification preferences screen. Lastly, what you can also do is that one of the best practices that I always suggest is that you can leave channels, and once you leave channels, what would happen is that you can come back at a later point and review all of the conversation that has been going on in that particular channel, um, and that would minimize the noise on Slack. So I think with that, we are pretty much done with tips and tricks. We now go ahead and talk a little bit about some of the shortcuts that we have within Slack. So you have a reminder shortcut within Slack. One of my favorite features. I think I use it everywhere and all day. You can just go ahead and fix a reminder for someone else, asking them to do something at a particular time. So, for example, if I have to remind someone to send an email to a client, I can just say that you can remind that person at a particular time to send that particular email, right? And the Slack bot is going to take care of that. You don't really need to send out a reminder to that particular person. You can also set yourself to do not disturb and away. I think this is a feature that most of the people use and they're aware of. If you come in the morning and you want to access all of your unread messages on Slack, you can just do a Control Shift A, and you'd be able to see all of the unread messages. And in a similar fashion, if you want to just switch channels, you can do a Control K, or if you want to see all of the shortcuts that are available inside Slack, you can just do a Control Slash, right? So we'll be visiting each of these shortcuts and the tips and tricks in detail during the course of the webinar. Are there any questions at this point?
Not from my side.
Thank you. So let's proceed. Now we'll be deep diving into some of the hiring best practices on Slack. And what I really suggest is that we had briefly touched upon channels in tips and tricks. And now this is the section where we would be putting this into action. So you can go ahead and create a private channel that is called hiring needs. And this channel is basically aimed at, defining all of the job descriptions and what are the hiring needs of the organization for the future. And this channel would, of course, be available to a bunch of HR folks and the senior management. And once you're able to discuss the future hiring needs of the organization, coordinate the pipeline, you can go ahead and have a public channel where you secure referrals from all of the people working within the organization. And this is a public channel which is open to the whole organization, and people can just go about suggesting that all of the prospective candidates for the job positions that have opened up. Once that has happened, you can have a private channel again with a couple of managers and people who would be interviewing the prospective candidates. And then you can just go ahead and prepare the panelists and get feedback on each of the new hires and the interviews and how did they go. And then after the hiring has been done, you can just go ahead and archive these channels. And finally, a private channel again to discuss compensation related matters. So what is the compensation that you're going to be giving out to a new hire? You can just discuss on that particular channel. So if you transfer all of these hiring best practices to Slack or MS Teams, what would happen is that all of these hiring best practices would be more efficient and collaborative within the organization. If you need more help on hiring, Lever and Greenhouse are some of the tools that you can use. Both of them has Slack add-ons, and you can go ahead and give them a try. I think Lever and Greenhouse are both accessible on MS Teams as well. So feel free to give these tools a try. I think they would end up streamlining your hiring process a lot more. Now we would be visiting how Slack uses Slack to onboard new hires. So Slack is a big organization, and what Slack does is that Slack has a dedicated workspace for all of the new hires. Now, for each of the cohorts, they would have multiple channels within this workspace, and the new hires can go ahead and visit those channels and get their questions answered, or just review the information or the questions that the previous hires have asked, right? So they split the workspace into channels that provide a bunch of things to the new hires that they want answers on. This workspace is uh, they give access to this workspace 2 weeks in advance, and reminders are sent out to complete onboarding procedures and document uploads and everything of that sort. You can also go ahead and pin getting started guides, or onboarding guides, or guide to living in SF or New York or anywhere else. You can go ahead and do that. Finally, while Slack is a big organization, it may not be feasible for all of us to do that. So if you're a small or a mid-scale firm, what I would suggest is that you can go ahead and invite new hires as a single channel guest, and then have a dedicated channel for each cohort, and they can get their questions answered through that. If you need more onboarding help, you can try out a tool called Donut, right? So Donut is basically a product that helps you create customized onboarding plans, and then the over a period of let's say 30 days, 60 days, you can just go ahead and complete the onboarding process. The employees can just tick off the task that they have done, and you can just go ahead and complete the onboarding process. So Donut is quite a cool tool. You can just go ahead and give it a try. Has a Slack and MS Teams add-on both. So feel free to give Donut a try if you need more help in onboarding. Before we move ahead to the time and attendance section, I would like to give you a final summarization of how you go ahead and do hiring and onboarding within Slack. So we talked about channels. What you can also do is that you can have a channel dedicated to welcoming new hires, which is a channel where you send out a short blurb about each employee, and the team can then just get together and welcome that particular employee within the organization. The other thing that you can do is that you can also use this channel to pin onboarding documents and any documents that are going to help the new hires. So you can just pin them onto a particular channel, and the new hires would be able to access these documents from here and get all their questions answered, right? So within the hiring and the onboarding procedures, what we did was that we used the public and private channels to streamline the hiring process. And there are a bunch of tools that we have covered, Lever, Greenhouse, Donut, that you can go ahead and use to streamline your hiring procedures. Any questions so far before we move on? Questions? No? Okay, great. So moving on, we now about attendance and the time off management within the organization, and how you can use Slack and MS Teams to do. We've got one of our own tools, Attendance Bot, over here, which is integrated with Slack, Microsoft Teams both, and Google Chat as well. And what the basic product philosophy is that you can just add that as an app onto Slack, Microsoft Teams, or Google Chat, and then you can just send out direct messages to the bot to create vacation requests, time off requests, clock in, clock out requests, and subsequently your manager would be able to approve these requests, and the employees would be able to track their vacations and track their balances. Attendance Bot also has the facility to have vacation quotas. So what if you've got unlimited quotas within the organization? That's not a problem. You can just go ahead and have unlimited quotas. But if you have specific number of days that you allow as vacation days or sick days or work from home days, then you can just go ahead and do that with an Attendance Bot as well. You can also choose to roll over these leaves to the next year, and the employees can go ahead and check their balances before applying for a vacation. So if they're heading out on a long vacation for Christmas, they can just say my balance to the bot and see the number of leaves that they have got left, and then they can just go ahead and apply for the leave. One of the things that we strive to achieve within any organization is transparency. When I say transparency, what I mean is that uh, it's a great question for managers and administrators, like who is working from where and who is out of office and who's not. So there are a couple of ways that attendance bot tries to achieve this transparency. One of my favorite features in the bot is the team calendar, and I really spend a lot of time on the team calendar. You can see all of the employee vacations on this particular team calendar. All of the holidays within your office would show up on this team calendar. And essentially, if you want to see that how many people are out of office on a particular day, in a particular week, or in a month, you can just come to this team calendar and you'd be able to view all of your employee vacations. The second way we go about doing this is that you can say summary to the bot, and the bot would be able to pull up an absence summary for your team today, tomorrow, and the upcoming leaves of your employees. So there's a command that you can give within Slack, and you can just see the absence summary of your team. You can also choose to make announcements on different channels. So, for example, we just talked about channels. If you've got team specific channels within your organization, then what you can do is that you can choose to invite attendance bot onto a particular channel, and we'd be able to make upcoming vacation announcements on that particular channel, or punch in punch out announcements on that particular channel. Announcements is a very interesting feature, and a lot of teams use announcements to do birthdays and work anniversary announcements as well. Finally, what I'd like to talk about is an integration that we have with Google Calendar or Outlook Calendar. So if you use any of those tools, what you can do is that you can integrate your personal calendar with attendance bot. And what we would do for you is that in case you're out of office for 3 days, we would just block that time for you, and anyone who's trying to calendar time with you would get your vacation responder. Moving on, so till now we've been talking about the vacation management aspect of attendance bot. Now we'll go ahead and discuss a bit about time tracking. So if you want to track the number of hours that the employees have worked in a particular day or in a particular week, attendance bot can help you do that. You can send out in and out messages to the bot, and the bot will be able to draw up a timesheet for you. How many hours have you worked in a day? What was your punch in time? What was your punch out time? What was your lunch and break time? The bot would be able to give you all of that. You can also keep a tab on the live punch status of your team through the attendance bot punch board. Who's working, who's on a break, and who is out. So you can just keep a tab on that as well. Great. So with that, I think we have come to the end of the attendance and time tracking section. Any questions so far?
Yes, how to view the team calendar?
Sure. So what you can do is that you can add attendance bot as an app onto your Slack workspace, and then you can go ahead and view the team calendar from the admin panel, right? So if you've got more questions about attendance bot, we can go ahead and send you a personalized email talking about all of the attendance bot features. But essentially, you can add that as an app onto your Slack, and then you can go ahead and view the team calendar on the admin panel. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Do you have some documentation that I can go through to understand exactly the whole cycle and the commands and stuff like this?
Absolutely. I would love to have a chat with you. So why don't we connect offline after the webinar, and I can take you through the specific procedures of how you go about doing that. Does that sound good?
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Sure. Great. Thanks a lot for your question. Any other questions? Okay, cool. So we'll keep moving. Right. So now we are going to talk about another tool called Office AMP. And the basic objective of using Office AMP is to streamline all of the help desk requests that you get, the various HR requests that you get. So you can go ahead and create tickets within Office AMP. You can just send out uh, messages to the bot and create tickets like, okay, I need new business cards, or where can I go ahead and access my pay slips. So you can go ahead and create tickets within Office AMP, and the category owners can go ahead, work on those tickets and get them resolved. One of the coolest features in Office AMP is that we've got a knowledge base where you can have all of the FAQs that your employees ask uh, the HR and the people ops teams. And then whenever somebody has got a question related to employee benefits, payslip, 401ks, or whatever, what you can do is that the bot will be able to auto resolve those questions that the employees have. So ultimately, you end up saving a lot of time during your day if you use Office AMP and you've got the knowledge base feature enabled, and the bot would be able to auto resolve all the questions that the employees have. In case the bot is unable to address an employee's concern, you can still go ahead and raise a request with the associated category owner, and the category owner would be able to resolve your concern. Finally, we'd be visiting expense claims and expensing within Slack. And Expensitron is a bot that we'd be talking about over here. The idea remains the same. You send out direct messages to the bot, and we convert that into expense claims. So, for example, if I had lunch with a client, I can just say that spend $51 on a lunch with a client, and it would create an expense for me. Uh, One of the features that I really like is the fact that how easy it is to upload a receipt onto Expensitron. And you can just go ahead, click on upload receipt, and then upload a receipt associated with the expense. Subsequently, when you confirm this expense, this would get passed on to your manager, and your manager would be able to view the receipt and approve or deny the expense accordingly. One of the other things that Expensitron does is that it can create mileage expenses. So if you just put in that I drove from New York to Boston to 20 miles, we would be able to convert that into a mileage expense for you. And then you can go ahead, upload a receipt associated with the expense, and your manager would be able to approve that. I'd just like to mention while we are on the expense tracking part that Expensitron has also got integrations with Xero and QuickBooks Online in case any of you use that tool. So I think it's a big plus that you can just go ahead, create expenses, and then sync them up with Xero and QuickBooks Online as well. Great. Moving on, now we'll be visiting some of the employee engagement related features. So it is really important to gauge employee engagement within the organization. And what you can do is that you can go ahead and use a tool called Poly. And this is, again, a tool that has got a Slack add-on. It also has an add-on for MS Teams. And what Poly tries to do is that if you send out questions related to various aspects of culture in your organization, then Poly would be able to gauge the employee sentiment over a period of time. Let's take an example. So, for example, I send out a question to the employees saying, do you think that we offer you enough autonomy in the decision making process related to your area of work? And then the employees can go ahead, strongly agree, disagree, be neutral about it. And then what Poly would do is that over a period of time, it would gauge the employee sentiment on that particular topic. And then employees can also add, respond to that and add comments related to that on Poly. So it is a really useful tool. And I think one of the hardest task within HR and people ops is to get the right people on board and then to maintain a satisfied workforce. And I think Poly goes a long way in doing that, and it can gauge the employee engagement and the employee sentiment within the organization. So I would suggest that you go ahead and give this tool a try. Another cool tool that I obviously have a lot of fun with is a lunch train, and it's associated with food. So what you can do is that whenever you're heading out for lunch, you can just start a thread that, I'm going to lunch for this at this and this place. And all of the people can just go ahead and join that thread. So they can just join you for lunch at that particular place, and you guys can have lunch together. So this is a tool that I use a lot, and along with my colleagues, I go ahead and put threads out on lunch train, and then you can just go ahead and board the train. All right. Finally, we'd be talking about more channels. Before we go ahead, any questions so far? Questions, anyone? Okay, great. Great. So we're almost towards the end of the webinar, but before we end, we'd be talking about some more channels. Uh, One of the things that HR and people ops teams are always concerned with is to build a healthy culture within the organization. And then channels can help you do that. So what channels can do is that in case you've got new product launches coming up, or in case there is a sales team that has been working with a customer, and you've got channel related to sales wins. So you can have different channels for all of these things within the organization. And then you can just applaud or recognize employees on those channels. You can also have channels related to employee of the month or what the company values are, etc., etc. You can also go ahead and create channels for volunteer programs and diversity groups. So within my organization, we've got this program called Each One Teach One, and there are a bunch of folks that work on that initiative, a CSR initiative. And then we've got a channel dedicated to that, and wherein we discuss that what is the future of the project, what are the things that we want to do. So you can go ahead and create channels for volunteer programs, professional development clubs, diversity groups, etc., etc. Lastly, I think what I'd like to mention is that you can have an Ask Me Anything channel. And this is really important because an Ask Me Anything channel would have all of the senior management of the organization onto that particular channel. And then employees can just go ahead and initiate an open dialogue with them. They can ask about the vision of the company, where is the company headed, what are the goals in the coming quarter. So you can ask all of those questions related to the company on that particular channel, and the senior management of the organization can go about answering that. Right. So with that, I think we've come to the end of the presentation. I'd like to offer you a summary before we quickly end. The whole idea of bringing HR workflows onto Slack or MS Teams is that we want to make them more efficient and collaborative. At the same time, improving transparency within the organization. We've discussed and talked a lot about channels within this webinar and how you can go ahead and bring some of the HR workflows and use channels effectively. So channels ensure transparency within the organization. They also go ahead and build a good company culture, and you can just go ahead recognize the good work that the employees have done on channels, and that gives the employees a feeling of belonging towards the organization. Finally, you can also go ahead and use channels to streamline your hiring needs and onboarding needs, and make hiring and onboarding more efficient as a process. So I think with that, we've come to the end of the webinar. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Questions, anyone who has questions?
Hey, I didn't get to the beginning of the presentation. I wasn't able to join Zoom earlier. So I was wondering if we could get the slides by email or something like that.
Yes, so this is a recorded session, and
Yes.
we would be sending across the recording to you. However, having said that, what I'd also like to mention is that this webinar is a part of a series of webinars that we are conducting. So we do conduct one webinar every month, and in case you'd subsequently want to join in any of the other webinars, I would be glad to have you there.
Yeah, I'd be glad to be there too. Thank you.
Great. So we'd be sending across a recording of the webinar to you. Any other questions? All right. So since we don't have any more questions, I'd like to end the webinar by saying that you can reach out to us in case at a later point you have any questions, you want to talk about any of the products that we've discussed during the webinar. You can just drop us an email at hi@anake.com, and then we'll be able to answer all of the questions that you have. In case you'd want to have a personalized demo of the products that we've talked about, you can also reach out to us, and we'd be able to arrange for that as well. And as I earlier said, that we'd be conducting these webinars every month, so I would encourage you to join for future webinars, and would be glad to have your feedback related to the webinar.
Before you end up this webinar, may I ask about the pricing, or this is something that you need to communicate one-to-one with me?
Do you mean about a particular product?
Yes, things related to the leave management.
Yep, sure. So could you help me with your email address?
Sure. Should I send it to
Yep, you can send it to me privately via chat, and we'd connect after that. Just after the webinar, I'm going to drop you an email, and we'll get the conversation started.
Should I send to hi@anaik.com?
I would suggest that in the chat box, you can just send out a private message to me, and I'll be able to start a conversation with you after that.
Did you receive it?
Just a moment, let me check. Yep, I got it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mohammed. Great talking to you.
Thank you.
Any other questions that you may have?
Not from my side.
Okay, great. So thanks a lot. I really appreciate all of you taking the time to join into the webinar, and I hope this has been helpful. In case you have any questions at a later point, feel free to reach out to us, and we'd be able to help you out. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.